Given the fact the PlayStation originated in the land of the rising sun, it's not surprising to know there are a lot of PS1 games that launched in Japan that never made it over here. And by here I mean everywhere that isn't Japan. Hello viewers, it's good to see you. I'm Will from Cultured Vultures. I've been to Japan, you know, and these are some excellent PS1 games that never came to the West. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you like this video, why not leave a comment down below? You know what to do. Pepsiman! No, listen, Pepsiman actually was pretty good. Stay where you are and learn the truth of your one true Lord and Saviour, the man of Pepsi. Japan is known for their love of absolutely ridiculous television adverts, with the Segata Sanshiro adverts for the Sega Saturn going down in the stuff of broadcasting legend. PepsiCo weren't immune to this trend either, creating Pepsiman, a superhero mascot to star in a variety of outlandish and ridiculous adverts about a guy in a rather fetching skin-tight blue and silver number, who dashes through dangers and other obstacles to deliver the cold, refreshing taste of Pepsi to those in need. Damn, we wish Pepsi would burst through the back door and give us some Pepsi right about now. This isn't sponsored, I promise. Anyway, the Pepsiman video game for the PS1 never released outside of Japan, despite the fact that the game is pretty much entirely playable in English, complete with catchy theme song. Pepsiman! Just like the adverts, Pepsiman sees you running to help citizens in need of refreshment, dodging all manner of ridiculous traps and hijinks along the way. Meanwhile, levels are interspersed with weird live-action segments of some sort of fat American guy drinking Pepsi. It's a seen-to-be-believed game if there ever was one, which makes it a shame that Pepsiman never released outside of Japan. Despite being referred to as some of visionary auteurs Hideo Kojima's best work, Policenauts never actually officially released in the West. Perhaps that's due to the fact that his previous work, Snatcher, was released in the West on the Sega Saturn in 1994, but ultimately flopped harder than Ric Flair doing the Ric Flair flop. Meanwhile, Kojima's popularity and recognition only began to explode with the release of Metal Gear Solid in 1999. So it's weird that Policenauts has never been given a proper re-release, especially after 2009, when fans provided a full English translation of the game that could be played via emulators. Now that Konami and Kojima's relationship is fractured, we'll probably never see a proper release, but that doesn't stop Policenauts from being an excellent PS1 game. Set in the far-flung future of 2040, if you can imagine such a thing, players control a police officer by the name of Jonathan Ingram, who back in 2014 was one of 5 officers known as Policenauts, who could patrol a space colony known as Beyond Coast. An accident left Ingram frozen in space for over 2 decades, with the lad now working as a private detective in old Los Angeles. However, he's been visited by his former wife Lorraine with a mission: head back to the now bustling Beyond Coast and investigate the disappearance of her now husband. Naturally, the case leads to Ingram's past and present colliding in this point-and-click adventure game that stands among the best in the genre. Have you ever been sold on a video game by just name alone? Slap Happy Rhythm Busters is one of those examples, largely because it's not only ridiculous and memorable, and sounds like something that would get the Daily Mail to wet their pants in anger, but informative too. You can already guess from that title that it's a music-based brawler of some kind, and while anyone expecting a beat-em-up in the style of Fighting Force or Crisis Beat will likely be disappointed, those who are hoping for a 2.5D fighting game will be over the moon. Unfortunately, Slap Happy Rhythm Busters never made it to the western shores, despite being mostly playable in English and boasting a wonderful cel-shaded style years before Beautiful Joe took the aesthetic and ran with it. On the surface, Slap Happy Rhythm Busters seems like a basic 4-button fighting game with 2 kicks, 2 punches and a few special moves for each character. The music of the game really comes into play once you've filled your special meter and activated beat combo. Here you'll need to time your button presses to the music to deal the most damaging combos, which is amazing for anyone who just wants a little bit of Beatmania or Buster Groove in their fighting games. With plenty of unlockable characters, each with their own story mode and endings to unlock, Slap Happy Rhythm Busters is an excellent addition to any fighting game fan's collection. We need to give someone happy slaps for not releasing this game over here though. Or unhappy slaps? I don't know, someone's getting slapped though. not a revelation to say that Atlus hoards their RPG franchises. Like we hoard your likes and nice comments. As the dopamine to get us out of bed, please give us a little forehead kiss. As the Japanese company has a range of franchises they have access to. Heck, we'd be here all day long just talking about the Shin Megami Tensei series alone. Never mind the various spin-offs like Digital Devil Saga, Digital Summoner, and the most famous of them all, Persona. Another RPG series that was a core part of Atlus's plans from the late 90s through to the early 2010s was Growlanser, a tactical RPG franchise that boasted 6 games, a couple of collections, and a few remakes across the PS1, PS2, and PSP. While Atlus and developers Careersoft did release most of the Growlancer series in the West eventually, the original title has never been ported or re-released outside of Japan. Originally conceived as a spiritual successor to Careersoft's earlier work, Landgrisser, the first Growlancer game, follows a young orphan called Carmine, who has been taken in by the kingdom of Rolandia's resident magician, Lady Sandra. Now that Carmine has reached adulthood, barely, he sets out to explore the world, ultimately becoming an officer for the King of Rolandia and finding himself embroiled in an ongoing conflict between the kingdoms of Rolandia, Bernstein and Ranzak. Throw in a tactical RPG combat system not too dissimilar to the likes of Baldur's Gate, and you've got the makings of a real banger. Perhaps the most annoying name for a PS1 game ever, since my brain just wants to auto-complete it as Cyborg. Cyber-Org is yet another game that features mostly English text and voiceover, meaning it would be easy enough compared to some other games to bring it to the West. Unfortunately, that has never came to pass, and the reason why is still unclear. This hybrid action-adventure, platforming and beat-em-up game was published by Square and released in 1999, so you have to believe there would have been some spare Final Fantasy VII money still left lying around to bring Cyber-Org to the West, but alas no. But then again, it probably didn't help that developer Fuzzbox seemingly only made Cyber-Org before disappearing off the face of the earth. The story isn't much to write home about, even though the developers wanted to refer to Cyber-Org as a space opera. You control one of 3 characters looking for a kidnapped ambassador, which essentially boils down to exploring a series of rooms filled with puzzles, platforming challenges, and enemies alike. Each character has their own weapons and abilities, and the action is pretty fast even considering the console it was on. It's by no means the best game the PS1 has ever seen, but the combos are fun, the gameplay is decent, and some of the character design artwork shown in the game's cutscenes looks like it's been lifted straight from an anime. It's another example of a studio going most of the way to ensuring a game is ready for Western release, only to fall or give up on the final hurdle, which is a shame as Cyber-Org could have been a genuine, actually underrated PS1 hidden gem for a lot of the Western audience. Yes, that was a cheap plug, and no, we don't need your validation. Alright, yes we do. We're a big fan of Treasure around these parts, even if we're still struggling to forgive them for how bonkers hard Alien Soldier is. While the company isn't as active as it once was, their back catalogue of bangers will put most video game developers to shame, even if the majority of these games featured some kind of combination of platforming and shooting beat-em-up action. Sometimes Treasure would step away from their niche though, and unfortunately for us in the West, we never got to see one of their best efforts, Rakugaki Showtime. If games with eye-catching graphics and unique visuals are enough alone to get you interested in a video game, Rakugaki's crayon-based characters and world should be right up your alley. A 4-player arena fighting game not too dissimilar from the likes of Power Stone, Rakugaki Showtime draws plenty of comparisons to Dodgeball, thanks to its emphasis on projectile-based gameplay. However, the paper and crayon-based characters and art design are what helped Rakugaki Showtime really stand out, giving the game more soul than Paper Mario if that's even possible. What's most heartbreaking about Rakugaki Showtime though, is that the game was going to be used as a basis for a fighting game based on Tiny Toons, titled Tiny Toons Defenders of the Universe, which would have been released on PS2 and GameCube. The project was quietly cancelled, though it did leak onto the internet a few years later. We're not breaking any new ground by saying people love From Software these days. Okay, maybe that love has been frayed somewhat now that Elden Ring's DLC, Shadow of the Erd Tree, has dropped and seemingly is kicking everyone's arse. But back in the days of the PS1 and PS2, FromSoft's work was largely unappreciated by the gaming masses. It's only thanks to the popularity of Dark Souls and subsequent follow-ups that people have begun to take notice of From's earlier work, with the Kingsfield series being the most notable example. Most of the Kingsfield games did make it to our shores at some point, but the original game is still stuck in Japan. You can't fool us by dropping the 2 in Kingsfield 2, you little rascals. We know there was a previous game, considered by many to be the precursor to the themes, gameplay features and world building shown in the Soul series, and other more recent From Software games. The original Kingsfield was actually a launch title for the PS1, known as one of the first fully 3D first-person RPGs ever made. Kingsfield followed the royal heir of Jean-Alfred Forrester, who arrives at an infested monastery teeming with dark forces. You'll explore catacombs, find new weapons and level up throughout your time underground, all with the hope of maybe defeating the evil that's been plaguing the land. Like other Japan-only games, Kingsfield did receive an unofficial English translation, so if you're curious about some of From Software's earliest work, you can still check it out and watch as it destroys your love for them. Hey, speaking of... There have been many video games that have launched in recent years that have allowed you to romance various NPCs that you might encounter or recruit to your party. So it would not be surprising if a game like Love and Destroy actually succeeded in this day and age. However, critical reception to this game when it launched on the PS1 just before the turn of the millennium wasn't great. So despite being published by Sony themselves, Love and Destroy was never localized for English-speaking audiences. As an unnamed high school student, you're rescued from an alien invasion by 3 robot girls. They're 3 mech suit and a sentient flying egg who serves as their instructor. All 4 of them are from the future, where humanity has failed to hold off the aliens, so they're back in the past with futuristic weapons, all to save the present. All this is a long-winded way of saying you're fighting aliens in huge destructible environments. With the mech you choose, the choices you make in dialogue and your performance in the levels affecting your relationship with these characters. Would it have popped off in a big way had Westerners been given access to it at this time? Probably not. But it's interesting to see how ideas fall in and out of fashion.
Okay, Will, so I did give you this script because the name of this game did quite scare me a lot, so just give it a go. You know, if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. The viewers won't bring it up like 4 or 5 times, you know? Give it a go.
Aconcagua. Aconcagua. What's that? Okay, thank you. Aconcagua.
Gorgeous.
A nail in the heart of the idea that video games have only just started to be political. When everyone knows it started with FIFA 98, Aconcagua features a story about a fictional South American country of Mizzurna, which is currently in the midst of an independence movement. The game starts with 2 main characters, activist Pachamama and Japanese journalist Kato, boarding a flight for a politically motivated independence tour, but things go awry when an anonymous terrorist leaves a time bomb on the plane. The plane crashes into the eponymous mountain, the highest peak in all of the Americas, with just 5 survivors stranded in the wreckage. Fortunately for us, no one resorts to cannibalism here. The actual gameplay plays out like a third-person adventure. Essentially, you control both Kato and Pachamama as you try to guide the rest of the survivors off the mountain to safety. Meanwhile, the terrorists have realized that their assassination plot has failed and will periodically send helicopters up to the mountain to mess with your day even further, if that's even possible. Despite earning decent enough reviews, Aconcagua never received a Western release, and while the obvious reason might have been 9/11, Aconcagua released in Japan a year and a half earlier. Perhaps the game was considered too niche, or maybe Sony opted to focus on funding the upcoming PS2, but that is a real shame. David Lynch's surrealist mystery series Twin Peaks probably deserves a Lifetime Achievement or a Services to Video Games Award from one of the big gaming award shows. Get on it, Jeff Keighley, or the Golden Joysticks, or the Real Game Awards. Games like Deadly Premonition and the original Alan Wake have been lauded for how they walk the line between small-town drama and the bizarre existential horror, but Human Entertainment beat all of them to the punch with the release of Mizzurna Falls for the PS1, which is every bit as weird as ridiculous numerous as you can imagine. No wonder Human Entertainment was also responsible for the Clock Tower series, while some employees went on to join Grasshopper Manufacture. The plot follows the titular town of Mizzurna Falls, a fictional Colorado town based near the Rocky Mountains, with hopefully no political dissidents trying to hide up there. You control a teenager by the name of Matthew, who has taken up the mantle of solving a mystery surrounding two high school girls. One who was found unconscious and another who has disappeared entirely. Set over 7 days, Mizzurna Falls plays out in real time ish, as 5 minutes equals to an hour in-game time, with every character following set schedules and events throughout the week. It's up to you to explore, find the relevant evidence, and be in the right place at the right time, following the breadcrumbs to the truth. Like some of these series, Mizzurna Falls also received an unofficial fan patch, so if you're in need for more Deadly Premonition X sleuthing in your life, consider this a heads up. And that is our list. Is there any games that you know of that haven't been ported to the West from Japan? Or from anywhere else? It could have been, games in America that have come here, or games in Europe that ever made it anywhere else. We're looking at you, possibly the Captain Scarlet game, or Lassie. But yeah, Mizzurna Falls, great game. There is no surprise, Japan were mad on Twin Peaks. There was an advert and everything featuring the original cast. That was just for Japan audiences only. I know this, of course, because I have been to Japan, and I directed the advert actually, and I will take no further questions. So like and subscribe and leave a comment if you want, or don't, I'm not your dad.